Who trained you? The question hit the air like a challenge, but the silence that followed was heavier. Commander didn't even look at her when he asked. His voice carried through the briefing room, dry, confident, the kind of tone that made grown men shift in their seats. 847 meters, 18-knot crosswind, one shot to confirm zero before the real thing. The SEAL officer wanted to know who could make it. Said she could. And the room went quiet in a way that wasn't about respect. It was about disbelief. Turned slowly, like he was deciding whether to laugh or just walk out. The corners of his mouth twitched. He told her the adults were talking, and maybe she should go check the coffee situation. The candidates laughed softly. The sound was short, awkward. A few of them couldn't look her in the eye. She didn't answer him. She didn't have to, because knew that silence, the kind that burns behind your ribs, better than anyone else in that room. She was 27. A civilian contractor now, firearms instructor, working at a training facility outside Fayetteville, North Carolina. 14 months out of the Marine Corps. Most mornings she arrived before the sun. The mist hung over the range like ghosts from yesterday's shots. She liked it that way, quiet, cold, simple. Targets at distances that made hobby shooters nervous. Steel echoing in the dark before dawn. She pulled her hair back tight, the same way she used to before patrols. No makeup, no rings, just calloused hands and a small scar under her chin, a reminder from a scope bite years ago. She didn't talk much. And she didn't need to. Because her work spoke for her, one clean hole at a time. She'd grown up in western Montana. Her father, Daniel, was a competitive shooter who drove old pickup trucks and believed in work more than words. He used to take her out to the range behind their property, a half-mile stretch of homemade targets made from recycled steel and painted white. He taught her to read wind before she could drive. At 9 years old, he'd hand her a .22 and ask, "What's the grass telling you?" By 12, she could call corrections without a spotter. Her father didn't coddle her. He told her shooting was the most honest thing he knew. "You either do the work or you don't," he'd say, squinting through the scope. And the target always tells you the truth. It wasn't the rifle that made her good. It was that she understood the ritual, the stillness, the calculation, the respect for distance. Every breath was a decision. Every trigger press a confession. She enlisted at 19, after 2 years of community college and no clear direction. The recruiter told her the Marine Corps didn't waste time on people who weren't serious. She said, "I'm serious." They sent her to camp. She passed recon indoctrination without drama. When a scout sniper school slot opened, her platoon sergeant wrote her name at the top of the recommendation list. The instructors didn't believe it at first. One of them asked if she knew what she was volunteering for: the sleepless nights, the stalks through mud, the pressure of knowing one mistake could cost lives. She nodded once. She finished 6th in her class of 22. The margin on her final stalk was tight, but her shooting scores were surgical. She learned to steady her pulse when her shoulders burned, to estimate range by terrain features, to solve ballistic equations faster than some could open a range card. Her motivation wasn't complicated. She remembered her father losing matches because he let frustration rush the process. He told her once, "The second you shoot angry, you've already missed." She carried that with her through heat, through exhaustion, through fear. Her first deployment was to Helmand Province, Afghanistan, in 2021. The air there was a mixture of dust, diesel, and something ancient, something that never left your clothes. Worked overwatch for road clearance patrols, eyes behind a scope for 12 hours at a time. She only fired with authorization. She never missed. She didn't think of herself as a hero. She was a professional. Her job was to make sure others came home alive. Once, during a mission that stretched into twilight, she saw movement near the shimmer of glass. She didn't take the shot. She radioed it instead. 10 minutes later, a hidden IED was found right where her reticle had been resting. Her team leader didn't say anything at the time, just gave her a nod, the kind that said everything. When she left the Corps, it wasn't by choice. Budget cuts, restructuring, fewer billets for junior NCOs in her MOS. She handed in her gear quietly, the way she had lived with precision without complaint. She still woke up early, still ran drills in her head when she couldn't sleep. Shooting was in her blood, and blood doesn't retire. The contractor work paid enough to survive, not to live large, but she didn't care. The range was where she belonged. Until the call came. It was from a training coordinator she'd met once before, a joint live fire event at Fort Liberty. Multi-service, high visibility. They needed civilian cadre to help evaluate SEAL candidates. She agreed before asking about the pay. On the morning of the event, she drove through the gates before sunrise. The sky was pale gray, wind already moving across the grass. She checked in at range operations, clipboard, ID, a quick handshake. Her name was on the roster, assigned to sniper qualification lane under Commander Jonathan, 23 years in naval special warfare. Reputation, ruthless on standards, allergic to nonsense. When she introduced herself, he didn't shake her hand, just glanced at her name tape. Contractor Wright, you can observe from the tower. My senior chief will handle the coaching. Kept her tone even. I'm listed as primary cadre on the assignment. He didn't look up. Then there's a clerical error. The senior chief, older and softer around the eyes, pulled her aside. Ma'am, Commander prefers minimal contractor involvement during high visibility. Best to just keep a low profile unless asked directly. She nodded once. Copy that. An hour later, the SEAL candidates arrived, a mix of nerves and quiet confidence. They lined up, rifles slung, boots in the dirt. Briefed them on the challenge, an 847-meter cold-bore engagement with an M110 SAS rifle, 20-inch barrel, M118 LR ammunition. Crosswinds 15-18 knots. One shot, no warm-ups. He asked who felt confident enough to make it first round. 3 candidates raised their hands. Raised hers. That's when everything stopped. Turned his head slowly, eyes narrowing. The expression wasn't anger, it was amusement disguised as command. He said it again, the same line that would follow her for weeks after. The adults are talking, Corporal. Maybe check the coffee situation. 2 candidates shifted uncomfortably. One looked at the ground. Said nothing, just lowered her hand, turned and walked outside. The air bit harder out there. The tall grass bent and straightened under gusts that told her everything she needed to know about the wind. She stood still for a long time, jaw tight, eyes scanning the line like she was reading a language only she understood. She'd heard versions of this before. In sniper school, when an instructor told her she might be better off in admin. During her first deployment, when a battalion staff officer questioned whether she should be in a 2-person sniper team without a male counterpart. It always started the same way, with doubt disguised as protection. Her father's words came back to her. The rifle doesn't care who's holding it. The wind doesn't care. The target doesn't care. The only person who cares is the one who hasn't learned yet. She closed her eyes, breathed, let the sound of the wind replace the sound of his voice. When she went back inside, her face was calm again, unreadable. The candidates took their turns. First shooter, missed left by 2 feet. Second pulled low. Third, 6 inches high, 8 right solid but not perfect. Called it a pass with coaching notes. Stayed in the back of the tower, hands clasped behind her. The senior chief turned to her finally. You actually think you can make that shot? She looked at him. Yes, chief. He frowned. Why? Because I've been shooting that system for 6 years. Wind's tricky but readable. Distance is within effective range. Fundamentals don't lie. He looked then back at her. Wait here. 10 minutes later approached. I hear you want to take a turn. Yes, sir. Live fire supervisor approved it, he said, voice clipped. But you miss, you're off this contract roster, permanently. She met his eyes. That's fair. He studied her for a long second, then nodded toward the line. Let's see it. The rifle was cold and unfamiliar. 3 shooters had already adjusted the scope, cleared it, checked the bore, inspected the suppressor. The steel was icy against her fingers. She lay prone, elbows wide, cheek resting gently against the stock. She let her breathing settle until the crosshairs stopped dancing. The mirage drifted left to right in visible waves, beautiful, almost hypnotic. She remembered this rifle's cold bore pattern from a prior contract. Half-mil left on first shot. She dialed elevation, 32 minutes of angle. Held 2.5 mils into the wind. Factored for gusts, terrain, thermal lift. Then she exhaled halfway and paused. The world went still. Her finger pressed. The recoil pushed straight back. The reticle barely shifted. She stayed in the glass long enough to see the trace arc, faint against the mirage, then vanish. A second later, the radio crackled. Impact center mass. Silence. The senior chief confirmed through the spotting scope, said nothing. Cleared the rifle, stepped back, eyes on the ground. 5 seconds passed before moved. He leaned forward, looked through the scope himself, adjusted focus. His expression changed. He turned toward her. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Answered softly. My father taught me wind when I was 9. The Marine Corps taught me everything else. He blinked. Quiet now. What unit? 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. How many deployments? 2. He looked down, nodded slowly. Why didn't you say that earlier? She met his gaze, calm, unflinching. You didn't ask. He stood there longer than he needed to. Commander's shadow stretched across the firing line, tall and unmoving. The wind whipped his uniform collar, but his eyes stayed locked on the target. Everyone was quiet. Even the wind seemed to wait. He turned back slowly, the range flag fluttering behind him like a heartbeat. He didn't say a word, just walked the length of the gravel path toward the target, boots crunching in the dirt, the sound sharp and deliberate. Watched him through the glass. He reached the target board, tore it off the backer, and stared at it for a long while. Then he walked back, same slow pace, same silence. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't the same. Ladies and, he said, holding the cardboard high for the SEAL candidates to see, this is what a perfect cold bore engagement looks like. At distance, under pressure, field conditions. He paused, eyes flicking too. If you want to know what right looks like, pay attention. That moment didn't feel like triumph to her. It felt like release, the kind that burns quietly through your chest. The candidates nodded. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked curious, even a little proud, like they'd witnessed something that rewired what they thought possible. The senior chief was grinning behind his sunglasses. Nice shot, ma'am, real nice. Just nodded, thank you, chief. Set the target down on the table beside her rifle, studied the hole one more time, and asked again, softer this time. Who trained you? My father, she said, and the Corps. He stared at her, like he was trying to reconcile the answer with everything he'd assumed when she walked in. After the line went cold, the team broke for chow. The range quieted down, only the metallic creak of flagpoles and the low hum of the wind through the tower slats. Stayed behind cleaning the rifle, habit, respect for the weapon. Walked back up after 10 minutes. No audience this time. No rank between them that mattered. Just 2 shooters who both knew what truth looked like at 847 meters. He leaned against the railing. You know, he said, I've been running this for 9 years. Never seen someone call that wind dead on. Didn't look up. It was steady most of the way. Yeah, maybe, still impressive. She nodded once, kept working. The metallic click of the bolt echoed against the tower walls. Hesitated, then spoke again, quieter. I owe you an apology. You don't, she said. I do. I should read your file before I open my mouth. She finally looked at him. It's fine, Commander. I understand how it looked. He shook his head. That's not an excuse. Her eyes softened. No, sir, it's not. That night she went back to her hotel room off Boulevard. Same beige carpet, same humming AC unit. She dropped her go-bag beside the bed and sat on the edge for a long time, elbows on her knees, hands clasped tight. The adrenaline had worn off hours ago. What remained was the quiet kind of exhaustion, the kind that hums inside you after you've spent all day being calm under pressure. She unzipped her rifle case, not because she needed to, but because it felt wrong to sleep without checking it. Every screw, every turret click, every smudge on the glass, all familiar, all hers. Then she found herself whispering without meaning to. You'd have liked that one, Dad. He'd been gone for 5 years. Stroke. Quick, merciless. She'd been in Helmand when the Red Cross message came. Her unit lead broke it to her gently, but there's no gentle way to lose the man who taught you everything. She remembered the last phone call. He asked if she'd done her job that day. She said yes. That's all that matters, he'd told her. You do the work, the truth shows up. She missed that kind of simplicity. The world after service was full of noise, contracts, paperwork, unspoken judgments. People who saw her as an anomaly, not a professional. But the truth was still there, on the range, in the math of a perfect shot. That's where she found peace. The next morning she arrived before anyone else. The sky was still indigo, a low mist clinging to the ground. She set up the targets herself. The smell of cold steel and gun oil hung heavy in the air. By the time the SEAL candidates arrived, the world was already awake, sunlight cutting across the grass. Spotted her near the tower. He gave a small nod, respectful, cautious, almost uncertain. When the line went live, he didn't sideline her. Instead, he called her forward. You're coaching this round. She blinked, sir. He nodded. You heard me. You've earned the right to show them how it's done. The first candidate stepped up. Young, nervous hands, breathing too shallow. Crouched beside him. You reading your wind? He nodded, trying to, ma'am. Don't try, read it. Watch the mirage, it's talking to you. He looked through the glass. Left to right, maybe 10 knots. She tilted her head. Check your grass movement mid-range, what's it say? He adjusted. 15, maybe 16. There you go. Now build your position. Let your breathing find the shot, not the other way around. He followed her cues, slow, steady. The shot broke clean. The round landed 3 inches high and 2 right. Good, now you know your miss, fix it. The second shot, impact center mass. By the end of the day, 3 out of 4 shooters had made solid first-round hits. The fourth corrected cleanly on his second attempt. Watched the entire time, silent in the tower, arms folded. When the final range cold call echoed, he climbed down, dust on his boots, and walked straight toward her. Good work today, he said. Thank you, sir. He paused, then added, you've got a standing invite to any future SEAL training event, if you want it. She hesitated. I appreciate that. You should, we don't hand those out often. That night she didn't celebrate. She didn't post about it, didn't text anyone. Instead, she drove out past the main road, down a dirt trail that led to an overlook above the training area. The moon hung low, silver and sharp. She killed the engine, stepped out, and leaned against the truck hood. The wind was softer here, still steady. She thought about all the times she'd been told no. No, you can't join that course. No, you shouldn't be in that unit. No, you're not supposed to be that good. Every no had built the foundation she stood on now. She whispered again like it was a prayer. "You were right, Dad. The rifle doesn't care." Days turned into a week, the exercise wrapped, the candidates shipped off to their next phase. Before she left, the senior chief found her by the range office. He said, "I've seen a lot of shooters come through here, not many like you. Keep doing what you're doing." "Thank you, Chief." He smirked. "Commander's already drafting a request to get you added to the permanent cadre list." Raised an eyebrow. Didn't think he liked contractors. "Yeah, well," he said, "he likes results." 2 days later, her inbox pinged with an official email. Subject: Naval Special Warfare Training. Cadre Roster Recommendation. It was signed by Commander Jonathan. The message was short, almost abrupt, like it had been written by a man who didn't know how to say sorry twice. "Corporal, your professionalism, precision, and instructional skill during the recent joint exercise were exemplary. Requesting your inclusion as approved cadre for future SEAL Sniper and Overwatch qualification courses." Ajay. She stared at it for a long time, then finally allowed herself the smallest smile. Back at the range in Fayetteville, things were the same: targets, dust, the low echo of distant shots. But something had shifted. The local shooters looked at her differently now, quiet respect instead of casual curiosity. Her supervisor, a retired Army marksman, clapped her shoulder one morning and said, "Heard you made some Navy boys rethink wind calls." She just grinned, something like that. Weeks later, the invitation arrived. A multi-service sniper symposium, advanced course. She was requested by name. Reread the email twice, then closed her laptop and stared out the window. The autumn wind was back, curling leaves across the lot. She thought about how far that wind had carried her, from Montana's open plains to Helmand's dust, to a range in North Carolina where men still doubted her until she pulled a trigger. Maybe it wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. Maybe it was just about doing the work. Because that's what her father believed. That's what she believed. Before bed, she set her rifle on the table and cleaned it again, slow, deliberate. The faint scent of oil filled the room. Her reflection in the window looked calm, older maybe, but steady. Outside, the wind shifted. She watched the tree line sway, the branches dancing like they were whispering something only shooters understood. She smiled faintly and said it aloud, one last time, not as a lesson, but as a truth. The rifle doesn't care. The wind doesn't care. The target doesn't care. You either do the work or you don't. She'd done the work. And that was enough. The wind was stronger at Fort. It came down off the Appalachian ridges, cutting across the valley range like a living thing. Flags snapped. Dust curled along the firing pits. The air smelled of rain and cordite, a mixture that felt both dangerous and alive. Stepped out of the truck, boots crunching against gravel, rifle case balanced in one hand. 3 months had passed since the day Commander held up her perfect cold-bore shot for everyone to see. But the memory lingered, heavy and precise, like the echo of a round through empty sky. Now she was back, not as a contractor filling a roster slot, but as lead instructor for the symposium's long-range program. Her badge said primary instructor. Her gut said, don't mess this up. She glanced toward the line, a crowd of uniforms from every branch. Marines, Rangers, SEALs, even 2 Air Force JTACs. Some recognized her name tag, some didn't. The ones who did offered quiet nods. The others looked past her, not quite sure why a civilian woman was giving the morning briefing. Caught her reflection in the window of the range office. Same tight braid, same calm expression she'd practiced for years. Beneath it, though, her stomach knotted like the wind itself. "Ladies and," the coordinator called out, "this week's symposium will cover long-range ballistics, cross-service doctrine, and environmental adaptation. Instructor will lead the sniper fundamentals track." Murmurs moved through the crowd. One voice, sharp, half-whispered, drifted from the back. "That's her, the Marine chick from Fort Liberty." Heard it, pretended she didn't. She learned long ago that silence often hit harder than argument. She took a breath, stepped up to the front and spoke. "Good morning. For those who don't know me, my job this week is simple, to make sure none of you miss for reasons you could prevent it. The rifle's honest. The wind's honest. You've just got to learn to listen." Her tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every shooter knows command when they hear it, the quiet kind that doesn't waste words. "Let's get to work." The first 2 days passed without issue. Morning lectures, wind-reading drills, range calibration. Ran the line like a machine, precise, efficient, calm. But inside she felt the weight of eyes always on her. Not all of them hostile, just curious, measuring. The same way she once measured distance. During lunch breaks, she sat alone at the far end of the picnic tables, eating in silence, notebook open beside her. Notes on wind drift, mirage, temperature shifts. She still studied, still refined. Even perfection could be improved. On the third morning, she found Commander waiting near the tower. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said. "Didn't expect to be here," he replied. "Joint Command sent me as liaison. Guess I'm your paperwork babysitter." She smirked. "Lucky you." He looked around the field. "Heard you've been running a tight ship. No complaints, that's rare." She shrugged. "They're shooters. They don't need a babysitter, they need a mirror." He studied her a moment. "You're still quoting your dad, huh?" "Guess I am." "Could do worse," he said. They shared a brief, easy silence, the kind earned through shared truth. Then the sky changed. At first it was just a low rumble, thunder over the mountains. But within minutes the wind shifted hard south, 20 knots and climbing. Clouds rolled in thick and fast, dark gray bruises across the sky. Range control radioed down. Lightning advisory, storm approaching from the ridge, visibility dropping. Looked at her, "You want to call it?" Squinted toward the distance. Half the shooters were still downrange checking targets. "Not yet," she said. "Let's pull the teams in first." She grabbed the radio. "All lanes, recall your shooters. Bring weapons safe and head for cover." Static, then a voice tight with wind. "This is Team 3. We've got one shooter downrange, scope malfunction. We're fixing it." Frowned. -3. Secure and move. Storms inbound. No answer. The wind kicked harder. Dirt lifted in swirling sheets. The sky dropped another octave. She didn't wait for permission. She grabbed her headset, slung her rifle, and started downrange. The grass whipped sideways, rain beginning to sting. She passed 2 teams moving back toward cover, yelling over the wind, "Get to the trucks." They nodded, faces half hidden behind goggles. Halfway down the lane, she saw them, 2 silhouettes crouched by the 800-meter mark. One standing, waving frantically, the other kneeling over a rifle case. "Ma'am," the standing one shouted as she approached. "Scope mount snapped. We're trying to." "Forget it," cut him off. "Pack it and go. You can't outshoot lightning." A flash tore across the sky, white and violent. The crack came half a second later, rolling across the range like artillery. The younger shooter flinched. "We're almost." "Now," she barked. They grabbed the gear, sprinted, stayed behind just long enough to make sure no one else was out there. Her hair whipped across her face, soaked in seconds. The rain was horizontal now. When she finally turned back toward the tower, she saw it, one of the target frames collapsing under the wind. The metal stand snapped, the backer lifting and tumbling end over end. Instinct made her drop to a knee and grab it before it flew away. Her hand closed on wet cardboard. And she froze. The bullet hole, a single clean circle dead center. Someone had just made a perfect 800-meter hit moments before the storm broke. She didn't even know who. She smiled through the rain. The rifle doesn't care, she thought. Even the sky respects that. Then she let the target go and ran. By the time they reached shelter, the range looked like a battlefield, debris, targets, wind flags shredded into ribbons. Lightning cracked over turning the horizon white. Inside the operations bay, soaked shooters caught their breath. Someone handed her a towel. Someone else muttered, "That was insane, ma'am. You could been fried out there." Shook her head. "They were still downrange. That's my responsibility." Appeared from the corner, headset still on. "You okay?" "Fine. You didn't have to go out there yourself." "Yes, I did." He studied her the way she stood, dripping, calm, unshaken. "You really don't scare easy, do you?" She smiled faintly. "You learn not to, fear wastes time." He chuckled, still quoting doctrine. "No," she said softly, "still quoting Dad." The storm lasted hours. When it finally passed, the range looked gutted. Targets down, frames twisted, wind flags gone. Walked the mud-soaked field, checking damage, boots sinking with each step. She felt tired, but in a good way, the kind of tired that comes after doing the right thing, even if no one asked you to. Followed behind her. "You realize you've become something of a myth around here." She raised an eyebrow. "A myth?" "Yeah, the sniper who shut up a SEAL commander with one round. The one who ran into a lightning storm to save her team. Rumor mills working overtime." She laughed once, dry and low. "Rumors are just noise, Commander. I'm here to work." "Still," he said, "the younger shooters, they're watching you now. You've become the thing they measure themselves against." She stopped walking. "That's not what I wanted." "Doesn't matter. That's what happens when you do the job better than anyone else." He meant it as praise, but she heard the warning beneath it, that the higher you climb, the more people wait for you to fall. That evening, after everyone cleared out, sat alone in the tower. The world was quiet again, puddles reflecting the last of the light, clouds moving east. She held her notebook open but wasn't writing. Her thoughts drifted to the ones who doubted her, to the ones she'd proven wrong without saying a word. She'd never wanted fame. She just wanted respect, the kind that didn't need to be spoken, the kind that existed in silence between professionals. Joined her eventually, setting 2 paper cups of coffee on the desk. "You still up here calibrating ghosts?" "Something like that." He sat beside her. "Command," adding a crisis management block to the curriculum. "They want you to teach it." She looked at him. "Why me?" He shrugged. "Because when things went sideways today, everyone followed you, not me." That hit harder than she expected. She looked away, out across the dark range. "I just did what needed doing." "That's leadership," he said quietly. "Most people talk about it, you just do it." For a moment, the only sound was wind, whistling through the tower slats. Then she said, "Sometimes I think leadership's just taking responsibility for silence, filling the space when no one else will." He smiled, poetic as always. She took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, perfect. "I learned from the best." Before dawn, she was back on the line, resetting targets by herself. The air was crisp, new. Mist hung low, carrying the scent of wet grass and burnt powder. The kind of morning that makes shooters believe the world can be rebuilt from precision alone. She paused at the 800-meter stand, the same lane where the mystery shooter had landed that perfect hit before the storm. The target had blown apart, but she could still see where it had been. One clean, centered hole in her mind's eye. She smiled. Then she whispered to the empty range, voice soft but certain. "You do the work, the truth shows up." The wind stirred the grass like an answer. Respect spreads faster than orders. By the 4th day of the symposium, everyone knew her name. Some said it with quiet admiration. Others said it with caution, the kind people use when they're not sure whether to salute or to challenge. Either way, when stepped onto the range, people straightened up. It wasn't just her precision that unsettled them. It was the calm, the unnerving, unshakable calm of someone who didn't flinch when storms hit or commanders barked. In a profession built on loud authority, her silence had become its own kind of power. But power attracts friction. And friction, she'd learned, always comes dressed as confidence. The Marine sniper candidate, Staff Sergeant Mercer, was talented, too talented for his age, and he knew it. 25, former designated marksman in a line unit, hands steady, eyes sharp. The kind of shooter who thought instincts could replace experience. On the third morning, during calibration drills, corrected his wind call by half a mil. He adjusted, fired, and scored a perfect impact. Instead of nodding, he smiled, a sharp, boyish grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Guess I just needed a woman's touch," he said. Laughter rippled through a few nearby shooters. Not cruel, just careless. Didn't react. She just said, "Guess you just needed to listen," and walked past him to the next lane. The laughter died fast. At lunch, Mercer joined her at the far end of the table. No one else dared. "Look," he started, unwrapping an MRE bar. "No offense meant this morning. I was just joking." Took a sip of water, sure. "But between us," he went on, lowering his voice, "don't you ever think it's weird? Running a sniper course like this, civilians teaching operators. I mean with respect." She didn't look up. "You think civilians can't teach operators?" "I think experience matters," he said. "Combat kills, confirmed records, that kind of experience." She set her water down. "I've seen enough, Sergeant, more than I care to remember." He smirked. "Guess we all have ghosts." She leaned back, eyes steady on him. "The difference is I don't use mine to prove anything." He held her gaze for a moment too long, then looked away. "Copy that, ma'am." But something in his tone told her he hadn't meant it. By the next day, the air on the range felt heavier. Small things, glances, whispers, the subtle kind of resistance that doesn't shout, it smirks. Ignored it the way she'd ignored doubt her whole career, but noticed. He found her by the tower that afternoon, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the field. "You've got a storm brewing," he said. "I've handled worse." He nodded. "I don't doubt it, but watch Mercer. He's got talent and a chip the size of a rifle stock." "Then he'll learn," she said. "Or break," replied. "Either way, you'll be the one who has to pick up the pieces." Late that evening, after the others cleared out, stayed behind to review target data. Patterns, groupings, bullet drift in shifting winds. The numbers told stories: who was calm, who rushed, who panicked. Mercer's sheets stood out, perfect clusters at mid-range, wide scatter beyond 900, overconfidence under pressure. She remembered being that young once, hungry, reckless, determined to prove something no one had even asked for. And she remembered how easily pride could get people killed. The next morning started calm, cool light, wind soft at 7 knots from the northeast. Final qualification day, longest range real stress test. Each shooter had 3 rounds at a moving silhouette from 900 meters, points for speed and precision. Stood behind the line, headset on, voice even. "Remember, you can't muscle wind. You have to understand it, feel it. Don't fight the rifle, guide it." One by one, they fired. The sound echoed through the valley, measured, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Then Mercer's turn came. He set up fast, too fast. His position was sloppy, elbows tight, bipod canted slightly off angle. Caught it instantly. "Sergeant," she called out, "check your level." "I'm good, ma'am," he said without looking up. "Your bubble's off." He hesitated, clearly annoyed. "With respect, ma'am, I've got this." She exhaled slowly. "Your round, Sergeant." He fired. The first shot missed right. Second shot clipped the target's edge. The third, clean miss. "Cease fire," she said. Mercer slammed the bolt back, frustration flashing across his face. The wind shifted. "I had it dialed." Crouched beside him, her voice calm. "The wind didn't shift. Your setup did, you rushed, you broke your platform. He shook his head. It's not that simple. It is. Her tone was quiet but final, the kind that didn't need volume to carry weight. He stood abruptly, brushing off dirt. Maybe your way works for you, ma'am. Some of us don't need to overthink a shot. Every instructor and shooter on the line heard it. Didn't flinch, she just said, then maybe that's why you missed. Silence spread like heat across the range. Later called her into the operations tent. You handled that well, he said. Depends who you ask. He chuckled. Mercer, complaining to his says you're sabotaging his evaluation. Crossed her arms. He sabotaged himself. I know that, said, but word's going to spread. You've got a target on your back now. She smirked. Wouldn't be the first time. Leaned forward. Just don't let it turn into something personal. She nodded. It's not, it's professional. Yeah, he said softly, but professional pride cuts just as deep. That night she couldn't sleep. The hotel room was quiet except for the low hum of the AC. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside, replaying Mercer's face in her mind, the anger, the pride, the fear underneath both. She'd seen that look before. Helmand, a young corporal who thought bravery was louder than caution. He'd ignored her call to hold position. 30 seconds later, the ridge they were watching erupted in fire. She still remembered the dust cloud that swallowed him. And the silence afterward. She turned onto her side, whispering to the dark, "Don't let it happen again." The next day was the symposium's final live-fire evolution, a team exercise. 2 shooters prepare, alternating targets at 1,000 meters. Wind gusting now, erratic, real-world conditions. Mercer was paired with a ranger sergeant named Holt, steady, quiet, patient. The opposite of him. Liked Holt instantly. Keep him grounded, she told Holt before they began. He's got the skill, just needs a leash. Holt smirked. Roger that. But midway through the drill, the wind went wild, sharp from the west. Targets vanished in haze. Most instructors called for a pause. Mercer didn't. Through her scope, saw him shake his head, wave Holt off and go for the shot anyway. She keyed her radio. Team 2, hold, that's a no-fire condition. No response. She watched as Mercer adjusted his scope, barely compensating for wind. He squeezed off a round, and the bullet kicked low, striking the concrete edge of the target pit. Cease fire, voice cracked across the range. Mercer's second round was already chambered when she reached him. She grabbed the barrel, forced it up. Are you insane? That ricochet could killed someone. He glared at her. I had it under control. You had nothing under control, she said through clenched teeth. You just proved that. The rest of the line fell silent. Every shooter, every instructor watching, was already running toward them. The range officer called for a full stop. Mercer ripped his headset off. You think you can embarrass me like this? You think you're the only one who can shoot? Stared at him. This isn't about shooting, Sergeant. It's about discipline. He laughed bitter. Discipline. You think hiding behind rules makes you better. You're just scared of someone better than you. The words hit harder than she expected, not because they were true, but because they came from the kind of arrogance she used to fight against inside herself. She took a step closer, calm but firm. I'm not scared of you, I'm scared for you. That stopped him cold. Arrived, voice sharp. Mercer, you're done off the range. The sergeant hesitated, jaw tight, but one look from sent him packing. He grabbed his rifle, stomped off toward the trucks. The range was silent again. Only the wind spoke, whispering across the valley like judgment. Turned to her, you okay? She nodded, breath steady. He'll come around or he won't. Studied her for a long moment. You know, most people would yelled, you didn't. I've seen what yelling does, she said. People stop listening. Later that night, she found Holt sitting outside the dorms, cleaning his rifle under a flickering light. He'll calm down, Holt said when he saw her. I know, said. You were right to stop him. Maybe, she said softly, but right doesn't always feel good. Holt looked up. You can't teach humility, ma'am. Some people only learn it after they fall. Smiled faintly. Yeah, I just hope he doesn't fall too far. The next morning, Mercer was gone, reassigned, disciplinary note pending. The official report cited procedural noncompliance. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just another lesson written in paperwork. But for it lingered. She'd seen the fire in his eyes, that desperate need to prove himself. The same fire that had once burned in her when the world didn't believe she belonged. The only difference was, she'd learned to aim it at the target, not at the people beside her. That afternoon she walked the range alone. The sun was low, the wind calm again, like it had watched everything and was tired too. She stood at the 1,000-meter mark, closed her eyes and whispered. Sometimes the hardest shot isn't at distance. It's the one inside you between pride and patience. She opened her eyes, exhaled and smiled faintly. Because in the end, her father had been right again. The rifle didn't care. The wind didn't care. And dignity, real dignity, didn't shout. It simply acted. The email came at 2:13. Subject line, request for advisory support, joint operation confidential. Almost deleted it. She was half asleep, the glow of her laptop screen painting the hotel room in blue light. She just finished another 12-hour training block, and her mind was still looping through wind tables and shot data. But the sender stopped her cold. Jay. When she opened the message, it was short, direct, the way field requests always were. I know you're supposed to rotate off next week, but we've got a situation. Need an experienced Overwatch advisor familiar with multi-service doctrine. Location classified for now, small team. It's not a contract job, it's an operational assist. You're the name that came up. Let me know if you're willing. JH. She read it 3 times. Her first thought was disbelief. Her second was the steady, familiar hum she hadn't felt in years, the one that starts deep in your bones when the real work calls again. She closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long while, the wind outside pressing against the windowpane like the past knocking softly to be let in. By morning, she'd made up her mind. The symposium wrapped, certificates handed out, hands shaken, smiles forced. The shooters she'd trained would go on to new units, new fields, new lessons to unlearn. Turned in her instructor badge and walked out through the gate just as the sun was rising, the same color as rifle brass. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She didn't need to. 48 hours later, she was on a C-130 heading east. Destination undisclosed. Only 3 others on the manifest, a Navy medic named, and a comms specialist from SOCOM named Duke, who spoke mostly in acronyms and chewed sunflower seeds like it was a nervous tick. The plane roared through dark clouds, no cabin lights, just the hum of engines and the faint vibration through the floor. Sat by the bulkhead, eyes half closed, rifle case strapped beside her. The weight felt right, not just physical but moral, the kind that meant something again. Sat across from her, reading a mission folder under a red light. When he finally looked up, he smirked. Didn't think you'd say yes. Shrugged, you didn't think I'd make that shot either. He chuckled. When the wheels hit the tarmac, the world outside was fog and cold. A forward operating base, temporary, nameless, canvas tents, mud, radios crackling and static. The kind of place that smelled like exhaustion and diesel. Briefed them inside a dimly lit tent. Situation sensitive, he began. Recon team operating in border terrain, classified region, encountered local hostiles, possible insurgent reformation. They've taken cover near a collapsed relay site. Terrain's rough, visibility's low. We're sending in a retrieval element. Your overwatch. Nodded once, row. Defensive until contact. We're there to get our people home, not start a war. She leaned over the map, studying the contour lines, steep ridges, crosswinds, no easy escape routes. High grounds here, she said, tapping a ridge northeast of the relay. But exposure's bad. You'll want to move at night. Smiled faintly. You really don't stop thinking like a sniper, do you? Thinking saves ammo, she said. They moved out at 200. Blackout drive through rain-slick roads, mud spraying against the vehicles. The sky hung heavy, moonless. By 300 they were on foot, boots sinking into wet soil, breathing in sync. The comms chatter was minimal, just the way liked it. Every sound mattered. They reached overwatch position before dawn. Laid prone behind a rock outcrop, scope glint covered, suppressor threaded, breathing shallow. Her world narrowed to one circle of glass, 8x magnification on a patch of darkness half a kilometer away. Somewhere down there, two friendly signals blinked faintly on the tracker, stranded recon operators. If the hostiles found them first, extraction would turn into recovery. Crouched beside her, whispering, "We've got 20 minutes before daylight. Once we have eyes on movement, call it." She nodded, adjusting her focus. Her breath fogged faintly against the eyepiece. The landscape looked quiet, too quiet. Even the wind was holding its breath. At 3:47, movement. A flicker near the relay structure, two heat signatures low to the ground, one limping. A third, larger cluster moving from the east. Whispered contact. 8, maybe 10 hostiles, mixed weapons. Range 650 and closing. His voice hardened. Confirm friendlies. She adjusted, zoomed. Two figures in, huddled behind rubble. Confirmed, they're boxed in. Exhaled slowly. All right, we move. Stayed prone, eyes in the glass. Commander, she said softly, if you move now, you'll be in their direct line. They've got high ground angle from your left. Let me cut the head off before you step in. He hesitated, rose defensive. Then consider this a preemptive defense. She didn't wait for the order. Her fingers settled on the trigger, body still, heart slow. One breath, too. She squeezed. The suppressor coughed once. The lead hostile dropped, no sound, no drama, just gravity doing its work. Chaos followed. The cluster scattered. Another leaned out to return fire. She caught him mid-movement. 2 rounds, 2 bodies down. His team advanced under cover. The firefight was quick, brutal, efficient. Dragged the wounded recon operator out of the debris while Duke called in the extraction bird. Never looked up. Her scope moved like a painter's brush, deliberate, graceful, merciless. By the time the helicopter blades thundered overhead, the field was clear. 12 minutes. 11 hostiles neutralized. No friendly casualties. When the bird lifted off, turned back toward her ridge and gave a small salute, just a hand up, nothing theatrical, she raised her hand in reply. And in that gesture, brief, silent, human, was all the apology, all the respect, all the history between them. Back at base, found her sitting alone beside a fuel drum, rifle across her lap, rain dripping from the brim of her cap. He sat down beside her without speaking. For a while, they just listened to the hum of generators. Finally, he said, "You saved that team." "They saved themselves," she replied. "I just cleared the noise." He smiled faintly. "You could stayed retired, could stayed teaching." "I thought I was done," she said, "but maybe the work isn't done with me." He nodded slowly. "You know, there's something different about you now." "What's that?" "You don't look like someone trying to prove anything anymore." Thought about that. About the years she'd spent chasing validation through perfect shots and perfect silence. She looked at her hands, steady, sure. "Maybe that's because I finally learned what Dad meant," she said. Waited. She continued quietly. "He used to say the rifle tells the truth, but I think he left something out. The rifle tells your truth. Whatever's inside you, fear, pride, purpose, it comes out the second you pull that trigger. Nodded, so what came out tonight? She smiled faintly. Peace, maybe. The next day, before dawn, stood alone at the edge of the airstrip, watching fog roll over the field. The rotors of the outbound bird turned slowly in the distance, waiting. Approached, gear slung over his shoulder. They're asking if you'll stay on as part of the advisory unit. Short-term contract, couple months. Looked out at the fog again. Maybe. You don't sound convinced. I'm not sure where I belong anymore, she said softly. The range feels like home, but so does this. Out here, everything's stripped down to truth. No egos, no politics, just wind and distance. Smiled. Guess that's your kind of honesty. She nodded. Yeah, maybe it is. When joined her at the tarmac, she was already holding her go bag. You heading out? He asked. Yeah, figure I'll go back to the schoolhouse. Maybe teach another class. Maybe just sit in the wind for a while. He extended his hand. You ever want back in, I'll have a spot. She shook it, firm, honest. I'll keep that in mind. He hesitated. You know, that shot back at Liberty, the one that shut me up, it's still being talked about. She smirked. I'm sure it is. I never asked what it felt like. She thought for a long moment. Like breathing, like everything I'd ever been told not to be, too quiet, too soft, too careful, suddenly made sense. I wasn't fighting the wind anymore. I was part of it. Smiled. Then maybe that's what makes you dangerous. She laughed softly. No, that's what makes me free. The helicopter's engines roared to life. She slung her rifle case over her shoulder and stepped toward it, boots sinking into the wet ground. Before climbing aboard, she turned back once, looked at the range, the ridges, the faint light breaking over the horizon. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, low and familiar. You either do the work or you don't. The target tells the truth. She closed her eyes, breath deep, and whispered, I did the work, Dad. The rest will take care of itself. Then she stepped into the bird and was gone. The rifle range was quiet again. Just the way she liked it. Morning haze rolled low over the grass, catching sunlight like smoke. Beyond the tree line, the first shots of the day cracked through the still air, sharp, distant, almost polite. Stood beside her old pickup, thermos in hand, watching a line of young shooters set up on their mats. A year had passed since the classified mission that pulled her back into the field. Officially, she'd been consulting overseas. Unofficially, she'd saved 12 people and vanished before the story could get out. Or so she thought. The first rumor appeared on a veterans forum, a thread titled The Ghost at Fort. No names, no details, just whispers of a woman instructor who'd walked into a lightning storm, shut down a reckless Marine, and then gone back into combat like it was nothing. Then came the podcasts, then the articles, then the documentaries that didn't quite use her name but used her story. By the time she returned to her range outside Fayetteville, she wasn't just an instructor anymore. She was a legend. The new students didn't hide it well. They whispered when she walked past. They stared at the rifle she carried, the one they thought was the rifle, the one from that mission. They called her ma'am, with the kind of reverence that felt heavier than respect. One afternoon, she overheard two of them arguing near the target pits. I'm telling you, one said, she took the shot at 900 meters in the middle of a thunderstorm. No way, the other replied. It was 1,200. I read it on a blog. They said she neutralized 11 hostiles solo. Stepped up behind them, quiet as a shadow. Boys, she said, it was 650 meters, and it was raining, not the end of the world. Clean your targets. They froze, faces red. Yes, ma'am. She smiled faintly and walked away. The truth was simpler and harder to romanticize, but simplicity rarely goes viral. At night, when the range was empty, she'd stay behind, running drills in the dark. It wasn't about staying sharp. It was about staying honest. Because fame, she realized, was just another form of noise louder, even than mockery. She'd spent years fighting to be heard. Now the world was listening too closely. One evening, her supervisor, a retired sergeant major with a habit of chewing unlit cigars, stopped by her firing lane. "You're getting mail again," he said, handing her a stack of envelopes. She frowned. "Mail? Fan mail, technically." He smirked when she didn't laugh. "You know how it goes. Soldiers, cadets, kids who think they've found their hero. Happens when people start telling your story for you." She took the envelopes. Most were addressed simply, "The Sniper Instructor, North Carolina." She opened one. Inside was a letter from a young woman, handwriting neat, hopeful. "Ma'am, I'm the only girl in my sniper training class. They tell me I'll wash out, but when I heard about you, I decided to stay. If they say I can't do it, I'll tell them to check the wind." Stared at the letter for a long time. Her throat tightened in a way that surprised her. The sergeant major noticed. "They're looking for someone to believe in," he said, "whether you asked for it or not." She folded the letter carefully. "I'm not a hero." He shrugged. "Tell them that, see if they listen." That night she sat on the hood of her truck, watching the last of the sun fade behind the tree line. The letter rested on her lap. The air was still. She thought about her father again, the man who believed truth came from effort, not applause. He'd hate this kind of attention, but maybe, she thought, he'd understand it too. Because sometimes, when the world refuses to see people like you, a story like hers becomes more than a story. It becomes permission. Still, she couldn't shake the unease. She wasn't supposed to be famous. She was supposed to be accurate. 2 weeks later, she got a call. Unknown number, military exchange. She almost didn't answer. But curiosity, that same quiet voice that always guided her scope, made her pick up. Said the voice on the other end, "It's..." She smiled. "Commander, you still alive?" "Barely. Paperwork's killing me faster than combat ever did." She laughed softly. "What's up?" "Got something for you," he said. "Not an op, not even a contract. A talk. Naval Academy's hosting a leadership symposium. They want someone who's done the work, not just talked about it." "I don't do speeches," she said. "Good," he replied. "They don't need one, they need a story." She hesitated. "You think I'm the story?" "I think you're the lesson," said quietly. "You've already earned your myth, might as well make it mean something." A month later, she stood backstage at the Naval Academy auditorium. The room beyond the curtain was packed, rows of uniforms, restless energy, young men and women with notebooks open and eyes full of ambition. The host's voice echoed, "Please welcome Corporal, Marine Scout Sniper, Instructor and Advisor." Applause. Loud. She stepped into the light. The podium felt too tall, the mic too close. For a moment she wished she was anywhere else, behind glass, watching distance instead of faces. But then she saw a girl in the second row, hair tied tight, shoulders straight, eyes sharp with the kind of fire recognized instantly, the kind that burns against doubt. She began to speak. "I'm not a public speaker," she said, voice calm but steady. "I'm a shooter. That means I've spent most of my life trying not to talk and making sure one sound counted for everything." Laughter rippled softly through the room. She continued, "People keep calling what I do courage. It's not, it's clarity. The kind that shows up when you're tired, scared, and out of reasons. The kind that tells you, do the work anyway." She paused, eyes sweeping the crowd. "You'll hear stories about me. Most of them aren't true. I didn't do anything superhuman. I just refused to let noise decide who I was." Silence. Then from somewhere near the back, a voice, young, raw, called out, "How did you know you were good enough?" Smiled faintly. "You never know. You just keep showing up until no one can ignore the work anymore. Afterward, the cadets lined up to shake her hand. Some thanked her, some just stared. That girl from the second row lingered until the end. When it was finally her turn, she said quietly, "Ma'am, my dad was a sniper too. He told me wind doesn't lie." His heart caught. "He was right," she said softly. "It doesn't." "Neither do you," the girl added, then saluted and walked away. Stood there for a long time after the room emptied, staring at the flag above the stage. Maybe was right. Maybe stories mattered, not because they made heroes, but because they made hope. That night she walked along the academy's waterfront. The bay was calm, moonlight rippling across black water. The city lights beyond were distant, soft, unthreatening. She sat on a bench and took a deep breath. The air smelled of salt and iron. Joined her quietly, hands in his jacket pockets. "You did good," he said. "I didn't freeze," she replied. He laughed. "You actually made them listen. That's rarer than a perfect shot." She smiled. "Feels weird, talking instead of shooting." "Different kind of precision," he said. "Same truth, though." She nodded. "Maybe, but this kind of truth doesn't leave smoke. Maybe that's what makes it last." They sat in silence after that, two people who'd seen too much and understood too little, yet found peace in both. Finally said, "You ever think about what's next?" Looked out over the water. "I think about wind. It moves, it changes, but it's never gone. Maybe that's the point. You don't stop being what you are, you just change direction." He smiled. "Then what direction are you headed?" She glanced at him, eyes glinting in the moonlight. "Home, maybe, wherever that is now." Weeks later, back at the range, found another letter waiting. This one wasn't from a cadet. It was from a mother. "Ms. My son served with one of the operators you saved last year. He told me you were the reason his friend came home. I just wanted to say thank you, not for the shot, but for reminding them there's still goodness in the work." Folded the letter and set it on her desk. She stared out at the open range, the flags shifting gently in the breeze. For the first time in a long time, she felt something unfamiliar, not pride, not relief, just peace. She picked up her rifle and walked to the line. The air was cool, the kind that made every breath feel earned. She lay prone, sighted downrange, and exhaled. The target shimmered faintly in the mirage, distant, silent, waiting. Her finger rested on the trigger, but she didn't fire. She just smiled. Because sometimes, she thought, the shot isn't about hitting anything at all. It's about knowing you could. She rolled onto her back, staring up at the sky. Clouds drifted lazily overhead. The wind hummed low, steady, patient. Her father's voice echoed in her mind one last time. "The truth will always show itself. You just have to stay still long enough to see it." Closed her eyes, breathed in deep, and whispered, "I see it, Dad." And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she had to prove anything. She'd already made her shot. The rest of the world was still hearing the echo. The hum of the aircraft was lower this time, softer, heavier, like it carried ghosts instead of cargo. Sat by the small porthole, watching the desert rise below her in shades of gold and ash. 3 years since she'd left the field for good, or at least, that's what she told herself. Now she was headed back. Not as a shooter, not even as an instructor. This time her badge read, Observer, Tactical Doctrine Review. It sounded clinical on paper. In reality, it meant, you're here to see what your legend did. The request had come from high up, Joint Command, through's office. New generation of operators deploying to an unnamed border region. They studied her case files, watched her training footage, even replayed the Fort Liberty Cold Bore shot like scripture. And they were acting on it. Too much, too fast. Command wanted her eyes on them, to understand why a group of young shooters were taking impossible shots and dying trying. When she first read the brief, her hands had gone cold. The myth of they called it online. She never asked to be myth. The C-130 touched down on a cracked runway, outside an outpost the size of a grocery store parking lot. Dust rolled through the heat. Stepped out, boots crunching against grit, the horizon trembling in the distance. A lieutenant with 2 clean boots jogged up, saluting fast. "Ma'am, huge honor. We've all read your—" She raised a hand. "Please don't." He blinked. "Don't what, ma'am?" "Don't start with the stories. I'm just here to work." He nodded quickly, cheeks red. "Understood. Captain Dyer will brief you." The command tent smelled like sweat and calm static. Maps pinned to canvas, radio chatter cutting in and out. Captain Dyer, mid-30s, calm eyes, deliberate tone, gestured to a terrain board. "Ma'am, we've got a sniper detachment rotation running Overwatch in these sectors. Mixed performance. But the younger ones, they're different." "Different how?" she asked. "They're chasing numbers, ranges, records. We've had 2 near misses already. One of them even said, and I quote, wouldn't have backed off the shot." Her jaw tightened. "What's their training background?" "Mostly your doctrine, ma'am." She froze. "Mine." Dyer nodded. "They use your range algorithms, your field videos. Hell, your quotes are printed on their training slides." She didn't answer. There was nothing to say. That night she sat outside the barracks, rifle across her knees, not loaded, just memory. The air was dry, humming with distant engines. Somewhere, a radio played a country song about home that made the desert feel even emptier. His voice echoed in her head. "You've already earned your myth. Might as well make it mean something." She whispered back, "You didn't warn me it could get people killed." The stars didn't blink. They never did. The next morning she joined the observation patrol. 4 shooters, 2 Marines, a SEAL, and a British liaison. Their sergeant was barely 28, face too young for the lines in his eyes. "Call sign, Wraith." He greeted her with an easy grin. "Ma'am, this is surreal. You're the reason I picked up a rifle." "Then I hope you learn patience," she said. He laughed. "Patience, not my strongest suit." That worried her. They hiked 3 kilometers up the ridge. Wind gusted hard, 20 knots from the east, visibility half a mile through dust haze. Wraith set up his rifle, a suppressed .300 Norma, bipod sunk deep into the dirt. "Target zone 1200, he said confidently. 2-man patrol moving northwest." Raised her binoculars. Mirage shimmered like smoke. "You sure that's not heat distortion?" He smirked. "Positive, I've practiced this." "Where?" she asked. "Online," he said. "There's footage of you calling wind in Helmand. I used that as reference." Froze. "That video's years old. Different terrain, different thermals." "I've adjusted," he said, settling his cheek against the stock. "Just watch." Her pulse ticked up. "Wraith." The rifle barked. The sound rolled down the valley. The target silhouettes collapsed instantly. Dust bloomed. He grinned. "Impact." Through her glass saw it, not a hostile. Just 2 local herders, scrambling for cover. Her stomach dropped. Cease fire, that was non-combatant movement. Wraith blinked. "What? No, that was." "Do you even know what Mirage angle you're reading?" she snapped. "You just broke row and probably started a chain reaction." The young Marine's grin vanished. "Ma'am, I thought." "Thinking isn't enough when you don't understand what you're seeing," she said coldly. The radio crackled. "Base to Overwatch, local movement panicking near Sector 9. Confirm no engagement." Closed her eyes. "We confirm," she said tightly, "no engagement." Back at base, she filed the report herself. No casualties, no names. But the message was clear. The legend had gone toxic. Command treated it like a data error, a small bump in an otherwise successful rotation. But she couldn't shake the look on Wraith's face, that mix of shame and disbelief, the same she'd once seen in the mirror after her first near-miss overseas. That night she found him outside the motor pool, sitting on a crate, rifle across his lap. He didn't look up when she approached. "I screwed up," he said quietly. "Yes." He swallowed. "I just wanted to do it like you did." She sat beside him. "Then you already failed." He flinched. She softened her tone. "You're not supposed to do it like me. You're supposed to do it right. I missed too, you know. I've just had longer to learn from it." He stared at the dirt. "You ever feel like you're fighting your own reputation?" She smiled faintly. "Every day." The next 48 hours blurred debriefs, calls, briefings with command. But at the edges of it all kept seeing the pattern, the overconfidence, the rushing, the imitation of moves she'd made in contexts they didn't understand. Her methods had become gospel without the discipline behind them. It hit her hardest during a logistics review, when she noticed one of the base walls painted with a phrase in black stencil. "The Rifle Care MCADE." She stared at it for a long time. The words that once centered her now felt like a wound. The rifle didn't care, but people did. And that was the difference. That evening's call came through the encrypted line. "Heard what happened," he said. "You okay?" "I'm fine, they're not." He sighed. "You can't carry the weight of every kid who tries to be you." "I don't want anyone to be me," she said softly. "I just wanted them to respect the craft, not worship it." "That's not how myths work," he said. "They start true, then grow teeth." She stared out at the dunes, wind whipping her hair. "Then maybe it's time to take the teeth out." "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly. "I mean maybe it's time to tell the truth, all of it." 2 days later, she called for a full unit meeting. No rank, no formality, just a circle of shooters under a hot metal roof, dust clinging to their faces. She placed her rifle on the table in front of them. "Everyone here knows my name," she began. "You've read the stories, you've seen the clips. Some of you think I'm what you're supposed to be. You're wrong." The room was dead silent. "I missed shots," she said plainly. "I made bad calls. I hesitated when I shouldn't have. I broke down once so hard I couldn't hold a rifle for a week. That's the truth they don't put in the videos." She looked at Wraith. "You think being a sniper means perfection. It doesn't. It means patience. It means not taking the shot when your pride wants you to." No one moved. She continued, voice soft but sharp as glass. "Don't chase the ghost of someone else's trigger pull. You'll never hit that target because it's already gone." After the meeting, no one spoke for a long while. But the air felt lighter. Somewhere behind her, someone began cleaning their rifle in silence. Not rushing, not posturing, just doing the work. That was all she ever wanted. At sunset, she walked the perimeter. The heat had broken. Wind carried the smell of dust and diesel. The desert stretched endless in every direction. She stopped at the wall where her quote was painted. The letters were fading now, chipped by sand. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small piece of chalk from her field kit, and added 3 words below it. "But people do." Then she stepped back and smiled. That night she stood on the ridge above the camp, watching the lights flicker below. The stars above were sharp and unblinking, like crosshairs on the universe. She thought of her father again, of every student who had ever looked at her and seen something bigger than human. And she whispered, "Maybe that's the point, Dad. Legends don't live forever, they just teach us how to aim." The wind caught her hair, brushing against her face like an old friend. She breathed it in, the truth, the weight, the calm. The rifle didn't care. The wind didn't care. But she did. And maybe that was enough. The range hadn't changed. Only she had. The air still smelled of gun oil and dust. The same wind rolled through the Carolina pines, whispering through the flags and brushing over the long grass where spent casings glimmered like dull gold. But the woman walking the line now was older, her steps slower, her hair streaked faintly with gray. Still steady, still precise, but quieter in a way that came from understanding, not fatigue. Had turned 42 the week before. No cake, no ceremony. Just a cup of black coffee at dawn, a folded note from a former student, and the sound of rifles echoing downrange like applause from another lifetime. She'd been back from overseas for 3 years. After her last observation tour, she declined every offer that came her way, no documentaries, no speaking circuits, no government contracts. She went home to the small cabin outside Fayetteville and rebuilt the range with her own hands, replaced the old steel, painted new target silhouettes. It wasn't nostalgia, it was penance and peace. People still sent letters. Some found their way through official channels, others through pure persistence. Most started the same way. You don't know me, but your story changed how I see. She read every one. Replied to none. Because the truth, she realized, didn't live in mail or medals or myths. It lived in the discipline of showing up, even when no one was watching. A pickup truck pulled into the lot around midday. She looked up from her spotting scope to see a figure climbing out. A tall young woman in fatigues, hair pulled tight, rifle case slung across her back. The girl hesitated, then waved. "Ma'am, you probably don't remember me. I was at your talk at the Naval Academy, cadet." Smiled. "I remember the eyes, sharp ones. You made it through selection." The young woman grinned. "Graduated last month, assigned to 2-8 Marines." Brows lifted. "My old battalion." "Yes, ma'am, they said you might be out here. I wanted to see if you'd, run a few drills." Nodded once. "Unpack your rifle." They worked for hours. Wind calls, range estimation, firing from improvised positions. The girl was good, disciplined, deliberate, but her confidence came with that same edge of youthful urgency recognized all too well. After the 4th iteration called for a break, they sat in the shade, passing a canteen back and forth. "You're steady," said, "but you're rushing your process. You want the impact too soon." Nodded. "I know, I don't want to waste your time." Smiled faintly. "You can't waste time when you're learning. You only waste it when you stop." The girl looked down, shy. "Ma'am, can I ask something personal?" "Go ahead." "What made you quit? I mean, you could still be out there. You're still better than anyone I've seen." Thought about that for a long time. The wind shifted, rustling the grass. "I didn't quit," she said softly. "I just stopped needing to prove that I belonged." The girl blinked, unsure how to respond. Continued. "There's a difference between fighting for your place and living from it. I spent years fighting. One day I realized I already had it." Nodded slowly. "I think I understand." "Not yet," said, smiling, "but you will." They shot until sunset. When the last round echoed into the trees, the air turned gold, that warm, heavy kind of light that makes everything look like memory. Walked downrange with her student. The final target had one clean hole dead center. The girl grinned, pride glinting in her eyes. "Finally." Touched the hole gently. "You didn't chase the wind this time, you listened." "I remembered what you said," the girl replied. "The rifle doesn't care." Chuckled, people still quoting that line. Everywhere, they even painted it in our team room. Shook her head, half amused, half wistful. "Then they better remember the second part." Looked confused. "Second part." Smiled, "But people do." That night after the girl drove off, stayed behind on the range. The moon hung low, silver light spilling across the dirt. She sat on the hood of her truck, hands wrapped around a thermos of coffee gone cold. The world was quiet except for crickets and the distant hum of the highway. She thought about all the versions of herself that had walked this earth. The anxious recruit, the cold-eyed sniper, the instructor, the reluctant legend. Each one had carried a different truth. Each one had left a mark. And yet in the end, all she really wanted was what she'd started with: silence, accuracy, and honesty. In her cabin that night, she opened the box she rarely touched, an old wooden crate that still smelled faintly of oil and cedar. Inside lay her father's logbook, his service patch, and a folded photo of him standing behind her at age 9, both holding rifles too big for their frames. The edges were worn, the ink faded, but the memory hadn't dimmed. She traced his handwriting on the logbook's inside cover. "The wind tells the truth to those who listen." She closed the book gently and whispered, "I listen, Dad, every damn day." Then she smiled, the kind of smile that carried no pride, only peace. The next morning she returned to the range early. Dew clung to the grass. The world was still blue with dawn. She set a single target at 1,000 meters, just one. It wasn't a test, it was a conversation. She built her position slowly, checked the wind, adjusted her scope. Every movement deliberate, every breath accounted for. When she finally pressed the trigger, the rifle spoke once, a single, clean sound that echoed across the valley. She didn't check for impact, she didn't need to. The truth had already landed. Weeks later, a letter arrived from the Marine base in camp. The handwriting was familiar, careful, neat. "Again. Ma'am, I made my first confirmed shot last week. Crosswind at 600. Remembered what you said about listening, not chasing. I wanted you to know. I told my partner something before I fired. I told him the rifle doesn't care. And then I told him, but people do. Thank you for teaching me both." Read it twice, folded it, and tucked it inside her father's logbook. She whispered, "Good, she got it." That evening, a storm rolled in, low thunder, heavy air. She sat on her porch, watching the rain flatten the grass, the same way she had years ago outside the range operations building when no one had believed in her. She thought of again his gruff laugh, his apology, his quiet faith. He'd retired 2 years back, sent her one last message. If you ever wonder whether it mattered, it did. She smiled through the rain. Yeah, it mattered. Later that night the storm cleared. The air cooled and the stars returned, infinite, indifferent, perfect. She stood out in the field barefoot, the earth damp beneath her feet. The old targets gleamed faintly in the starlight. She felt small beneath it all, but not insignificant, just part of it. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a shooter or an instructor or a soldier. She just felt human. A woman who'd spent her life learning how to see clearly, through glass, through distance, through noise. And maybe that was the real lesson. Not about aim, not about skill, but about clarity. To see the world as it was, and still choose to act with dignity inside it. As dawn approached, she sat on the porch and poured a final cup of coffee. The sun rose slow and gold over the tree line, casting long shadows across the field. She whispered softly, as if narrating to no one. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't taking the shot, it's knowing when not to. Sometimes silence says more than sound ever could. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The wind carried her words away. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled one last time, not like warning, but like applause. Smiled, lifted her cup in a quiet salute to the sky, and closed her eyes. The world kept turning. The wind kept moving. And her story, her truth, kept echoing, long after the sound was gone.